Ladies and gentlemen, you welcome to this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. We are broadcasting from Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. My name is Babla Jonathan. In our top stories in this edition of the news, they are free again. After several days in detention, barristers Stamford Richard and Amel Chomeni have been granted conditional freedom by the Bonanjo Court of First Instance. They say they will appeal the case. They will appeal to reverse the verdict of the Bonanjo Court of First Instance. We shall bring to you details and many more analysis in this edition of the newscast on Equinoxe Television. And in sports, the president of the Confederation of African Football, Ahmad has been suspended from all football activities by the World Football Governing Body, FIFA, for 5 years over violation of rules of ethics of the association. Stay with us. The Court of First Instance in Bonanjo, Douala 1 subdivision has granted conditional freedom to barristers Stamford Richard and Amel Chomeni, who were arrested after the standoff between some lawyers and security and defense forces in that same court. They have been in detention for several days, and during the hearing of that case today, they were granted conditional freedom. They were slammed a 6-month suspended jail term. Details in this report by Equinoxe Charles.
They have been slammed a 6-month suspended sentence for 3 years. This is the verdict of the Bonanjo Court of First Instance in the case of barrister Stamford Richard and Amel Chomeni.
They have been given 6 months suspended sentence for 3 years. It means they can go home, and that if they commit this kind of offense again, then they would have to serve the 6-month sentence before they are prosecuted. The
lawyers are also to pay a fine of 100,000 francs CFA for destruction of property, contempt of the magistrate, group rebellion, and disturbance of public services.
It was more like a clash of the titans. There was the force of the bench and the force of the bar. And so I think the judge saw that there was too much tension in the air and thought that it's what we call in English, in pidgin parlance, a draw game. Everybody went home satisfied. But I want to say that it is not necessary for that clash to always happen, because that kind of force can get out of hand and the entire nation will suffer. There's every reason for us, when we have this kind of problem, for the bar and the bench to meet in Wicklow and discuss and solve the problem.
The lawyers say they will file an appeal to reverse the verdict of the Bonanjo Court of First Instance. On the 10th of November 2020, the popular slogan which emanated as "Fire in the Temple of Justice" came as a result of lawyers being ill-treated at the Court of First Instance in Bonanjo when forces of law and order threw tear gas into the court to disperse the lawyers who were protesting against the detention of their colleagues.
Equinoxe Charles reporting there, and of course that was a Bar Ntoko Justice Barrister Solicitor Notary Public, member of the Cameroon Bar Council, speaking there in that report, and he went further to analyze today's court session compared to what happened in the first appearance of the first, that is the court session, during which the lawyers had a standoff with security and defense forces, or better still, according to some lawyers, they were attacked. Listen to him.
The procedure I saw in court today was a procedure a little bit different from what we have in the Anglophone section of the country. The two gentlemen pleaded not guilty, and we expected the court to produce the witnesses so that you could give evidence of what happened, and then the accused persons will have an answer to give. But surprisingly, it was the Procureur de la République who gave the evidence and gave the exhibit in court. That is not the procedure. And so the aspect of cross-examination, examination in chief and re-examination was not seen in this court. So it was more like a miscarriage of justice. I think there's so much for us to learn from all of this. It was a horrid one too. I can conclude it was a horrid decision for people to go home and reduce the tension in the air.
Eba Ntoko, Justice, Barrister, Solicitor, Notary Public, and member of the Cameroon Bar Council, speaking there, comparing what happened during the court session in the Bonanjo Court of First Instance in the Douala 1 subdivision today and what happens in Anglophone Cameroon, or better still in the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. And earlier, lawyers in the country had agreed to go on a nationwide strike action beginning November 30th against the detention of their colleagues and what is qualified by the lawyers as an attack on the legal profession in the country. For me, Armstrong Sander has more.
The strike action is one of the resolutions taken during the extraordinary Bar Council session that took place in Yaoundé on November 13, 2020. Holding on the heels of police brutality on lawyers in Douala at the Bonanjo Court of First Instance on November 10, 2020. The Bar Council adopted a couple of resolutions to push for the release of all lawyers in detention and revamp the tarnished image of the profession. Contained in a two-page document co-signed by the acting Bar Council President, Barrister Claire Atangana, and the Bar Council Secretary General, Barrister Philippe Olivier, members unanimously called for a nationwide strike action beginning November 30th to December 4th, 2020, during which no lawyer shall attend court. Members of the Bar Council also suspended the appearance of lawyers on criminal matters in all the courts across the country, including the Supreme Court and the Special Criminal Court. They also suspended the appearance of lawyers in all courts dealing with electoral dispute, including the Constitutional Council. The Bar Council also cancelled judicial honors for the late Bâtonnier Barrister Charles Party Chakunti from taking place at the Court of Appeal in the Littoral region of Cameroon and the Supreme Court in Yaoundé in the Central region. The Bar Council says the said judicial honors will take place in a different location, more accommodating to lawyers, and which will be announced later. The Bar Council wants lawyers in Cameroon to be calm, cautious and more vigilant, avoid provocation and violent confrontations in order not to fall into what they call snares designed to weaken the bar. Among the lawyers detained in Cameroon are two Douala-based lawyers, Barrister Tamfo Richangarka and Barrister Amel Keming, who witnessed the lawyer-police confrontation at the Bonanjo Court of First Instance in Douala. They are reportedly charged with insulting a magistrate, destruction and commenting on a matter which is sub judice.
Omi Armstrong Sander reporting there, and barristers Tamfo Richard and Amel Chumeni currently being set free from the New Bell Central Prison, where they have been in detention for several days following their arrest after the incident in the Bonanjo Court of First Instance. We shall be giving you updates on that. Now we talk about the campaigns ahead of the December 6 regional elections in the Republic of Cameroon, the first regional elections in the country, and campaign started over the weekend in the northwest region. The campaign was launched by officials, militants and supporters of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement (CPDM) political party at Ayaba Hotel amid the unstable socio-political and security situation reigning in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And the campaign launch took place, of course, over the weekend, as I indicated, and chairing the launch, former Prime Minister and Grand Chancellor of National Orders, Philemon Yang, in his capacity as coordinator of the CPDM campaign team for the Northwest region, said that the regional election presented an opportunity, or presents an opportunity for what is qualified as a rebirth of the region. Listen to him.
Some say the word decentralization in Cameroon is almost as old as the country itself, but yet very little to show even by the supposed actors. the drivers of the process. And today in 2020, the Cameroon government says the time is now.
The time to act is now, for tomorrow might be too late. Once more, let's all look in the same direction by supporting the vision bearer in the person of President Paul Biya.
And in Buea, the Southwest Regional Capital, the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, the CBDM, is launching the campaigns for the elections of the regional councillors. Former Prime Minister Peter Mafani Musonge, the Southwest team leader, revealed that the nation is at the final stage to witness the birth of effective decentralization.
We're in the last phase of decentralization of the process, and the election of 6th December 2020 is the highlight of the process.
And the Anglophone regions are having a clause of special status. While some are still on the fence but ready to judge the Regional Assembly and the House of Chiefs from their fruit, this youth leader is encouraging the youth to come on board today and take what has always been their cry of a better future, which to him is part of the package in this new dispensation.
The youths should be very positive about the idea of the regional council. Let us come together and support the idea. It is in our favor, especially the youth of the Southwest, especially the youth of the Northwest. I'm telling you, let us not go behind. Let us not allow other people who are out of our generation to take advantage of this thing and dictate our future for us.
Expectations are plenty, no doubt, but these traditional rulers, being at the grassroots, certainly know that they need to win the support of their subject with their actions, not words.
Well, so social amenities as a whole, well, they're expecting a lot, and want to assure them that by the text, what we have at our disposal, at our competence, we shall give them the best of it.
And what is on the table now is the campaigns for a people who have been destabilized by a blood-sucking crisis, to give them an opportunity to bring change, and why not end the war. Until then, the rendezvous is December 6, 2020, the day of the elections.
That was rather Southwest correspondent Derek Jato reporting on the launch of the regional election campaigns in the Southwest Regional Chieftown, Buea. The campaigns launched led by former Prime Minister Mafani Musonge in that part of the country. And I told you earlier that the campaigns ahead of the December 6 regional elections in Cameroon were equally launched in the Northwest Regional Capital, Bamenda, notably at the Ayaba Hotel. And speaking during that launch, the chairperson of the CPDM campaign team in the Northwest region, former Prime Minister Philemon Yang, said that the regional election presents an opportunity for a rebirth of the Northwest region, a rebirth that is expected to come at the end of the gunshots, the gun battles, destruction, killings going on in the two English-speaking regions of the Republic of Cameroon. Take a listen to former Prime Minister Philemon Yang, head of the CPDM campaign team in the Northwest region.
This is an important election for us. Like other elections, this one is about nation building. And our historical responsibility is to reshape the Northwest region. We have an obligation to embrace the facts and accept the truth. The truth is simple. Since 1990, the political life and economic regression in this region have grown from bad to worse. Our regional public life has suffered tremendous damage. Our political upheavals have come along with nasty consequences. In the past 80 years, the stormy upheavals in this region have constantly jeopardized our economic and political progress. In fact, this is an understatement. We have an obligation to accept that our regional ups and downs have rendered us economically unattractive to visitors and to business investors. Constant upheavals do not attract business and economic activities. Our choices have come along with horrible consequences. This is unfortunate. However, we have a God-given right to reshape our region and embrace a beautiful future in this region.
And now we go up north, where traditional rulers in Marwa, in the far north region of the country, express optimism with regards to solutions to the plights of their respective communities, notably inadequate electric energy and portable water supply, the problem of bad roads and other social problems. These problems are expected to be solved within the context of the implementation of the new decentralization code, with the regional elections coming up on the 6th of December 2020. Equinoxe has more.
Campaign ahead of the December 6th regional election is on in the Jamare division. Two CPDM lists are known. His Majesty Bakari Buba Lamido of Marwa heads the first list, while the second is piloted by His Majesty Abdoulaye Wabi Lamido of Dagala.
Il nous a quand même présenté sa candidature.
We support His Majesty Bakari Buba. We wish him good luck and hope his victory will make him defend the interests of traditional rulers in the Jamare division. Problems of lack of electricity, potable water, and roads, we are confident under him will be challenges of the past.
Notre première déliance, je pense que c'est les infrastructures.
Oui, c'est l'occasion d'exprimer leur voix. Et on est tous derrière l'équipe que tous les majestés ont bien voulu choisir pour conduire à bon port ces conseils régionaux.
There are 1,666 second and third class chiefs who are expected to vote their choice. These chiefs are equally convinced that
oui, avec la décentralisation,
the most talk about decentralization can be solutions to problems plaguing localities in Jamare.
En direct avec lui.
With the involvement of traditional rulers, the latter hopes that they will be considered in their functions as auxiliaries to the administration.
Nous sommes l'auxiliaire de l'administration, l'œil de l'administration, porte-parole de l'administration.
Campaign launched in the Jamare division is expected to attain maturation in the days ahead.
Out of the country, we take you to Ethiopia, and we're going to be talking about the crisis in the Tigray province. In that country, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Ahmed Abiy, has warned the fighters in the Tigray province to drop their guns, or they will be neutralized by the security and defense forces of the country. The crisis has been worsening in that part of the country, with so many people reported dead and displaced. Immaculate Fogwe has more.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has given Tigrayan regional forces 72 hours to surrender before the military begins an offensive on the regional capital Mekele, which has been invaded by people who he qualifies as rebels. Responding to the Prime Minister, the Tigray People Liberation Front said its forces were digging trenches and standing firm. They say surrendering is not an option. Tigrayan leaders are accused of revolting against the central authority and starting the conflict by attacking federal troops in the town of Dansha. The Tigray People Liberation Front blamed Abiy's government of marginalizing Tigrayans immediately as he rose to power. They say he removed many of them from top government and military positions and equally detaining many. Hundreds of persons have been killed and 30,000 refugees now seeking refuge in neighboring Sudan since November 4th, when the conflict began. All attempts made by foreign nations to mediate the conflict have failed, as the Prime Minister says it is not a conflict or war, but law enforcement operation. In a statement on Sunday, he said all the necessary precautionary measures have been taken to ensure that civilians are not harmed. Over in Burkina Faso, vote count has begun after Sunday's presidential and legislative elections, which was held in a tense security environment. President Roch Christian Cambore's reign, marred by insecurity carried out by jihadist groups, led to over 1,000 deaths and displacing 1 million people from their homes due to violence. Opposition candidates accused the president of not putting enough efforts to end the bloodshed. According to the Central Election Commission, about 7% of the electorate were unable to vote for fear of violence in the north and east of the country.
United Nations organization has urged Ethiopian authorities to ensure the protection of civilians as the army plans to attack the capital of the northern region of Tigray. Yesterday, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced a 72-hour deadline for the region's fighters to surrender. The army warned Mekere's 500,000 residents that soldiers will encircle the city and attack it. The Tigray People's Liberation Front, which controls the mountainous region, has vowed to keep fighting. Hundreds of people have reportedly been killed and thousands displaced in the recent weeks. The United Nations humanitarian coordinator for Ethiopia, Catherine Sozi, says the authorities have to guarantee the safety of aid workers and civilians. Now in sports, the president of the Confederation of African Football has been suspended from all football activities for the next 5 years by the World Football Governing Body. FIFA Ahmad has been banned from all activities concerning football with regards so in connection to his alleged violation of rules of ethics of the FIFA Association. Details in this report by Smanjik and Gabriel.
When he was elected as the Confederation of African Football's president some 3 years back, many saw Ahmad as the square peg in a square hole and knew that things will no longer be the same again in Africa's football, with several changes envisaged. The sanction coming from the chamber of the Independent Ethics Committee this Monday has surprised every sports fanatics on the African continent. The committee accused Ahmed of breaching the code of ethics in the following aspects: duty loyalty, offering and accepting gifts or other benefits, abuse of position and misappropriation of funds. The terms of the decision were notified to Mr. Ahmed Monday, 23rd of November, when the decision was signed. In accordance with Article 78, Part 2 of the FIFA Code of Ethics, Ahmed will be notified in the next 60 days, after which it will be published on legal.fifa.com. The decision of the Chamber of the Independent Ethics Committee entails that Ahmed will be suspended for a period of 5 years.
It's a big decision, yeah. We are going to take big decision here.
Talking Point is up next. Barrister Sufu Ben, advocate, legal advisor of the Social Democratic Front SDF political party, is our guest today. Barrister, you're welcome.
Thank you.
You were at the Bonanjo Court of First Instance today, and the two lawyers who were being detained at the New Bell Central Prison, Barrister Tamfu Richard and Barrister Amel Chomeni, have been set free. What's your take about the verdict of the Bonanjo Court of First Instance and how the case was managed?
Well, thank you very much. Actually, to say they were set free is a little bit an overstatement, because they were convicted. 6 months suspended sentence. What's the meaning of that? That within 6 months, if they commit any similar offense or any other offense, they will first of all have to go to jail for 6 months. So for now, my 2 colleagues are convicts. Those suspended.
It's a kind of conditional freedom.
It's conditional freedom. That within 6 months, you must live a fit and proper life. But what we are saying is, yes, that's a verdict which is subject to an appeal, and which we, the lawyers, have decided to appeal. The aching issue is, why should the Procureur de la République tender a case filed in court when the military people who brutalized the lawyers were even within the precincts of the courts? The issue is, when an offense is committed, this offense to the State Council, it was committed flagrantly. Actually, it was even contempt in Korea in the face of the court. Now, there was...
Before we go further, please, can we have a little more explanation of those legal terms?
Yes. What we are saying is, according to the legal department, the prosecutor, the lawyers put a standoff against their colleagues not being granted bail and to be conveyed back at the Newberg prisons. Now, the military were called in, who came and used tear gas and used force against the lawyers in order to take back their colleagues to Newberg prison. What we are saying is, if at all an offense was committed, it was committed on either way. When the military man uses excessive force, he too is bound to be tried. And when you now bring the lawyers for trial and you keep away the supposed witnesses, who are the military people, because under cross-examination, it was going to come out that actually the military people who attacked the lawyers on that day at the trial went into excesses. And this can only be brought out under cross-examination. But when you block them and bring the case file, they'll tell you, well, it is found in the law. It's unfortunate. The Criminal Procedure Code is a law which needs a lot of amendments. And they'll tell you they were tried under Section 336. Section 336 of the Criminal Procedure Code is to effect that in the absence of the witnesses, the prosecutor can tender the case file. The question we are asking here is, where were these witnesses? Where did they go to? No justification was given in the absence of the witnesses. And as I say, these were military people who were present. Normally, the battalion that came that day to attack the lawyers were known. The state prosecutor, the state council cannot pretend to say he does not know the elements of the police or gendarme, whosoever, attacked the lawyers on that day. So those are his witnesses.
They came to maintain order.
They came to maintain order.
The lawyers.
No, when you come to maintain order, and in the course of trying to maintain order, you go into excesses, you have committed an offense, and you could be tried, Mr. Babla.
So the soldiers who were involved in that cacophony, we should call it that way, should be
equally. They should be tried.
They should also be tried.
Yes, and if they had submitted themselves for examination in chief and cross-examination, most probably, and I'm certain about that, the element of provocation shall have come in. We all know our military. Quite often they get into excesses. Normally, lawyers are gentlemen, and the first tool of a lawyer is his brain, and the second his pen. No mad lawyer will just get up and start attacking a military man or attacking a judge or attacking a registrar in a courtroom. That is our judicial temple. And that is where the lawyer has the highest protection on earth, the world over. If he's attacked in his own sanctuary, then there's something fundamentally wrong. And at the end of the day, none of the people who attacked agreed. Some school of thought will say the lawyers, first of all, committed an offense. Yes, but do two rights make a right? Do two wrongs make a right? The answer is no.
No, the verdict of a 6 month suspended sentence that runs through a period of 3 years, is it equal to what happened? Is it equal to the charges leveled?
Yes, as per the charges leveled, that verdict is within the frame. But what we are saying is, like the question I raised earlier, which I'll continuously raise, where were the witnesses of the prosecution. No reason was given for their absence, meaning Section 336 ought not to have come into play when Section 333, 334, 335 have not been exhausted. This cited section talks of examination in chief, cross-examination, and re-examination. And 336 is only an exception to the rule of odi altering party. That is, let the parties be heard.
And
in this case, and the parties in this case were the military people who used force on our colleagues, and any other witness who was in court there. It might be some passerby who witnessed what was taking place in court on that day. It may even be the magistrate who was in court on that day that could be a witness. Nobody is above the law. And when an offense is committed, everybody needs to come on board.
What is the impact of the absence of the witnesses on the verdict, on the decision taken by the court?
The impact on the absence of the witnesses on that decision, particularly that of today, is, as I've said earlier, the element of provocation. Provocation in criminal law is a partial defense. And if cross-examination took place and that element of provocation was brought out, maybe the judge would have, unlike giving 6 months, would have given 3.
But that element,
because provocation only diminishes criminal responsibility. It doesn't avail you of the entire punishment.
Now, when the law says that 3 months or 6 months suspended sentence,
yes,
you explained earlier that that means within that 6 months they have to really stay away from.
For instance, if it were 6 months suspended for 3 years, what, in other words, the judge was saying that I hereby convict you to serve a 6 months imprisonment term. However, probably because of their profession, you shall not go to jail for these 6 months. But within, you will be free. They are releasing you instantly, but be sure that within the next 3 years, you commit no criminal offense. It's like you are a prisoner in your own house. Because you move now with a chain on your legs, the chain is a mental chain, because the person is not handcuffed, but he's aware that should he commit an offense, they will revisit that judgment on him. And when they revisit that judgment, their judgment will be executed, meaning you will go to jail for the 6 months.
Does the law define the offense that shouldn't be committed by the lawyers, or it has to do with any kind of offense? Felony?
Ordinarily, everybody is before the law, and a lawyer is a judicial officer. He is even supposed to be more prudent than any other person. The offense, if a lawyer commits an offense, it is rather aggravating, because you ought to know that this is an offense and you stay off. You guard and you counsel people not to commit offenses, so you should not be seen to be committing offenses.
Right, I'm asking this question because there are people who have been arrested and charged with what is called in French outrage contre le chef de l'État. Outrage contre le chef de l'État, hostilité à la patrie. You know, hostility against the fatherland, attack on the personality of the head of state. But
you see, sometimes even before the advert, there's a law which is a very bad law, which again I must criticize. It's a 2014 law in this country, law on terrorism. Before the coming into into effect of that law, even in the penal code, you had hostilities against the state, meaning you cannot take up an uprising against state institutions or against the head of state in his person, insurrection, revolution. That's if you are revolting against the state, fine. Those are huge penalties. They are called felonies.
Yes, but my worry is about the action that often leads to that. Yes. For example, Barrister Tamfu may just come on Equinoxe and then he criticizes the head of state. He criticizes his policies. He criticizes his actions. And then the next day, that word appears. Attack on the personality of the head of state. Yes. Hostility against the fatherland.
Those are offenses that are found in the 2014 law on terrorism, which I say the draftsman of the 2014 law, was an anti-democrat. He was an anti-democrat in the sense that the 2014 law stopped even political parties, political activists from going out to demonstrate. If you have a political party and you don't have the opportunity to come out to demonstrate against a decision by the head of state, against a decision by a minister, against a law or a draft law proposed by parliament or the senate, then are we in a democracy? We are not. That's why I said the 2014 law is not only bad, but it is incurably bad because it's anti-democratic. There's anybody that comes out on a street protest. For instance, that Mr. Biya has been head of state for 35 years, is too long. He must go. They'll target the terrorists. For instance, that the detention of this person is not proper. He must be released. They'll say it's hostility against the state. It is found in the 2014 law, which is very unfortunate. Then, why do you allow political parties to exist? Because the only way where a politician can demonstrate his frustration against government institution is by demonstration. Besides writing, is to call his supporters and his militants to come out and do a street manifestation. First, the law says you deposit an application with a due, right? If you put an application to the due of Uri, I want to have a political rally tomorrow and we are going to demonstrate against the decision of the head of state on this and this. And he says no. You are a political party, right? And as a political party, you owe a duty to demonstrate. By the time you come out and say no, because the due said no, you are now a terrorist.
Because you violated the instruction of the administrative authority.
So, where else do they want? By the time you go to court even to attack the decision of the due, that I was a political party, I own a political party, I have a right to demonstrate, they will tell you, no, those words you are using. Hostilities against the state, revolution against the state. In fact, if we are sincere in this country, we have so many laws to revise. And one of those major laws is the 2014 law. I remember when that law was being debated, SDF protested in the National Assembly. The SDF MPs demonstrated that no, this law is anti-democratic. But the CPDM, and even the overwhelming majority, they went ahead and passed the law. Today, we are all witnesses to it.
And you lawyers are now rising up against what you consider as an attack on the legal profession in the country. You have decided to go on a strike action, boycotting courts, not putting on your legal attire, and so on. Do you think this action is enough to produce the needed results?
I think so. The action is enough. I hail the Bar Council for taking that decision, because as a core, we must be seen to be one another's keeper. And it, as I said, that's the only way where we can protest. What if we were to put on our robes and say, okay, we are going to meet the Minister of Justice and get to Yaoundé and they say we are terrorists? That hostility against the state. We will now be facing a life jail. Yes. So we cannot take those steps because there's a bad law that stops people from demonstrating. So the best way is to stay off the court hall. First, we'll be exposing our clients to injustice, because there are some magistrates where a protest of a lawyer means nothing. He even threatens the client, whether your lawyer comes or not, I'm going to go on with the case. And when you do that, you are against the rule of fair trial. Give the defendant, the accused person, the opportunity to defend himself. If it's a civil matter, by the time a court pronounces that this man is liable, let the man go home satisfied that at least I was given the opportunity to defend myself.
All right, you're the legal advisor of the Social Democratic Front, one of the parties of the opposition not taking part in the first ever regional election in Cameroon, and in the northwest and southwest regions. In the northwest region where you're coming from and the southwest region, the two English-speaking regions, the CPDM is dominating. In fact, the CPDM is everywhere, so to speak. And the former Prime Minister, Philemon Yang, leader of the CPDM campaign team in the Northwest, said this is an opportunity for a rebirth of the region. What do you think about that?
Well, Mr. Yang, Prime Minister Yang, for his words, he has his choice of words, and I have mine. A rebirth after how many years? The regional councils ought to have taken place since 2006. We are 14 years ago when the constitution was amended. What were they waiting for? That Anglophones should rise up and say enough is enough, suppression is enough, we are now Southern Cameroonians, we are now Ambazonians, we want independence, and you don't listen to them, and it degenerates into a civil war. Then you think you are bringing regional councils now. What happened in 14 years? Why the rebirth after 14 years? The question is, when you protract an illness, for instance, if you have malaria, right? There's a drug for malaria. And if your physician keeps giving you the treatment of typhoid, can you ever get well, Mr. Babila?
Are you saying that the government has not been taking the right decisions and actions?
Why? The government is not proactive. The government is not proactive. They put institutions in place, the government stays quiet and waits for an opportunity to come up, and then you now come to put the instructions. I've asked, in the 2006 constitution, regional councils were there. Senate was there. Constitutional Council was there. Why are all those things coming up only now? Where was the government from 2006 to 2016? 10 years.
Some will respond to you that better late than never. So can we have, is it possible to have the rebirth in this present context through the regional elections and the special status for the Northwest and Southwest?
I find it a bit difficult, because a child who was born in 2006, right, is 14 years old now. It's an adolescent. If those things were implemented long before now, we will not be talking rebirth. It therefore means a child was delivered in 2006. If I take Mr. Yang for his words, a child that was delivered in 2006 went back into a mother's womb, and now is being delivered in 2020 for the regional elections to take place. Is that what you are telling? Is that what you want me to understand? Or is that what you want Cameroonians to understand? Why the delayance? That is the question. There's a proverb in my dialect that it will be very funny to hear this, that if your finger stays too much in your anus, it will come out with carcass. So the question I asked government is, why has it taken government 14 years? Why is the 2006 constitution being implemented piecemeal when it was not provided for in that constitution that it will be implemented piecemeal?
Now that it is being implemented, can it yield the desired result?
Well, hopefully if it does, fine. If it doesn't, fine. But as far as the SDF is concerned, the SDF is not in for those elections because of what happened on previous elections before the regional elections. It will be an exercise in futility. Some say, why did the SDF go for the elections, this and that? I'll take you back to 1990. The SDF was criticized that in 1990, if they never boycotted elections, this or that would have happened, this or that would have happened. If the SDF boycotted this year, the parliamentary and the local council election, oh, the cry would have been, if they went in, they would have had majority. If they went in, why if boycotting an election is a fundamental right? Taking part in an election is a fundamental right.
And the Social Democratic Front are choosing to boycott, even though many think that boycotting the regional elections will be of no impact because the party practically had no voters. As far as the regional elections is concerned, the councillors, they lost almost all the councils in the two speaking regions. Barrister Sufu Ben, advocate, legal advisor of the Social Democratic Front, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.